Module 11. The Discipline of Communication. Why do you think parents are keen on teaching their children how to read, write and speak? Why is it that people value the ability to express their opinions? How are you able to accomplish your tasks in relation to being part of the team? As you may notice, these questions are in no way connected to each other. But if you ponder on each of there seems to be one unifying concept that is suggested, and that is communication. Communication, the field formed and fermented. Communication is both a process and a practice. It is systemic, in a sense that you engage yourself in an ordered and organized way of understanding meanings of things uttered by another person within an interaction. Wood, 2015. Communication is ongoing and is in process even when you do not speak, because even your nonverbal gestures mean something to another person. There is no way of knowing when communication begins and ends because of the system of meanings that people attach to practically everything that can be sensed and perceived. Wood suggested that communication cannot be halted at any one moment. It is so intertwined with meaning-making that even the most innocent and unwitting actions or statements may actually interpret it in a certain way. Fields of communications in different perspectives. Communication may be regarded as a simultaneous exchange of codes among people who have consensus on the meanings of such codes. Communication is abstract and requires interpretation of every word or utterance, as these are merely representations of one's thoughts. Communication guides people in creating both their subjective realities, personal beliefs, opinions, and life views about the world, and objective realities, the rules and conventions that govern daily human living. Meaning is the heart of communication. Meaning, this term will be repeatedly used in the modules on communication. As Wood, 2015, claimed, meaning is the heart of communication. People understand the words that come from each other's mouth because of the consensus or agreement among them on what these words actually convey in context. Meanings may be either suggested, implied, or literal, explicit. Based on Marshall McLuhan's media map of history, communication in the pre-literature age, or the age of primitive humans, involved the mere use of sounds to express a thought. During this time, communication was used for hunting and gathering. By the time the literature age came, humans learned how to write characters and glyphs/symbols. This ability was improved during the print age when printing press was invented by Johannes Gutenberg in the early 1400s. Finally, the electronic age saw the invention of various forms of mass media, which later paved the way to the information and infrastructure age. First World War, technology started to progress and societies were becoming more and more literate, on which mass media forms such as books, newspapers, and radio sets proliferated. People wanted to improve their ways of life and move past the memories of the war, thus, communication became essential in promoting change. Moreover, mass media became pivotal in business, marketing and advertising. Almost the same thing happened in Second World War. Psychology. When a communication expert views communication as a behavior and as an expression of inner thoughts, the perspective is towards psychology. Sociology. As mentioned, people come together to commune and form societies. As communication is the core of such formation, then the perspective is towards sociology. Anthropology. Communication makes cultural formation and maintenance possible as people share the meanings of codes and symbols. With communication becoming a way of life, this perspective lends itself toward anthropology. Communication as your reason for being. In order for you to survive, you must adapt to the changes in technology, which are brought about by industrialization, globalization, and integration. The sociology of mass communication. The interest on communication and the development of theories regarding the discipline has had a different history in various parts of the world. The manner through which the effect of mass communication is studied in the American perspective was very quantitative, scientific, and empirical. Communication was strictly viewed under the social sciences, thus, psychology, sociology and anthropology are employed in analyzing problems and issues in communication. Today, the American perspective is more welcoming of non-quantitative means of studying communication, but the quantitative method remains. European view, which is also known as Wissenschaftssoziology, places an interest in communication and its relationship with culture, thus, it primarily used interpretation as method of analysis. Core values of communication. Personal identity and health. Communication allows patients to relate their health concerns to healthcare specialists like doctors and nurses, who in return would explain the proper diagnosis and treatment to the patient. Your personality is a product of your interaction with other people. Lane, 2000, suggests that because humans have a basic need to interact, communication has also become essential to healthcare. Dr. Dean Ornish said one consistent difference between healthy and sick people is satisfying communication in their relationships. Core values of communication. Relationship values. By engaging in conversations and later on uncovering certain aspects of yourself to other people, you are able to gain friends. Communication indeed fosters relationship. Daniel Goleman, book, Social Intelligence, mentioned that humans are wired to connect. Professional values. The discipline is considered to be a popular collegiate degree due to the perception that communication is closely linked to professional success. Productive and harmonious atmosphere could be maintained if messages that flow in all corners of the workplace are clear and they reach the concerned individuals. Core values of communication. Societal values. As citizens/members of your communities, it is your responsibility to contribute to the development of your society. The sociology of mass communication. The interest on communication and the development of theories regarding the discipline has had a different history in various parts of the world. The manner through which effective mass communication is studied in the American perspective was very quantitative, scientific, and empirical. Today, the American perspective is more welcoming of non-quantitative means of studying communication, but the quantitative method remains to be more dominant way of thinking. On the other hand, the European view, which is also known as Western sociology, places interest in communication and its relationship with culture, thus, it primarily used in the interpretation as method of analysis. Core values of communication. Communication is central to human living. From time you were up until you sleep in the evening, you are engaged in communication. Wood, 2015. Provides some of the more apparent aspect of a person's life in which communication can be most useful. Personal identify and health. Your personality is a product of your interaction with other people. You become the person that you are because you also consider other people's opinion toward you. Communication allows patients to relate their health concerns to healthcare specialists like doctors and nurses, who in return would explain the proper diagnosis and treatment to the patient. Relationship values. By engaging in conversation and later on uncovering certain aspect of yourself to other people, you are able to gain friends. Relationship values. By engaging in conversation and later on uncovering certain aspect of yourself to other people, you are able to gain friends. In his book, Social Intelligence, Daniel Goleman, 2017, mentioned that humans are wired to connect. Professional values. This discipline is considered to be a popular collegiate degree due to the perception that communication is closely linked to professional success. There is truth in this perception in such way that one cannot afford to commit errors and misunderstanding in the workplace just because of poor communication. Communication models, ways of explaining how communication occurs. In his book McQuail's Mass Communication Theory, McQuail's, 2015, provided some of the most popular models developed by several communication scholars in their attempt to define and explain communication. Transmission models. Transmission models are those which view communication as process of conveying a fixed quantity of information wherein the message is determined by the sender or source. One scholar who used the transmission model is Harold Lasswell, who posed the most famous question about communication. Who says what to whom, through what channel and with what effect? Who say sender? What message? Though what channel? To whom receiver? And with what effect? Lasswell's model explains that communication begin from a source or sender of a message. This set out and flow through a channel to be received by another. The message can have a corresponding effect on the receiver. In 1949, Claude Shannon and Warren Weaver included noise in the linear transmission model of Lasswell. Noise pertains to any interference to the smooth flow of transmission. Meanwhile, George Gerbner offered a transmission model where someone perceives an event and reacts in a situation through some means to make available materials in some form and context conveying content of some consequence. 1957, Bruce Wesley and Malcolm McLean Jr. developed a model which veered away from using the terms sender and receiver. Instead, their model considered the more general term communicator, who transmits his or her understanding of the events or views/voices in his or her society. Wesley and McLean Jr. believed that interests and demands of an audience are at the core of communication, and that audiences are selective of and responsive to messages offered to them. Ritual or expressive model. If you have noticed that transmission model are very linear and mechanical, expressive models, on the other hand, value communication in the context of shared understanding and emotions among communicators. Publicity model. The publicity model represents communicators who are considered to be spectators than participants in the communication process. Attention is regarded as a barometer whether the communication that took place was successful or not. Publicity model is often used to understand advertisements as they take into consideration how their message would be received by the audience. Reception models. The reception models of communication are concerned with how audiences understand or decode the messages received. Another scholar, David Berlow, created a model that accounted for factors that affect how communicators are influenced when they send and receive a message. These factors are the following: communication skills such as reading, writing, speaking, listening, and watching. Knowledge about a subject or topic. Attitude toward the topic and the audience. Social and cultural aspects that influence the content of the message and the manner by which it is sent. Breadth of communication. Also known as the level of communication, the breadth of communication pertains to the kind of interaction that occurs between you and the other persons you are relating with. May it be verbal, written or spoken, or nonverbal, gestures, body language, etc. It is expected that you will find yourself in a unique communicative situation. Personal communication. You perform an intrapersonal communication when you engage in self-introspection, reflection, or conscience checking. Thinking aloud takes place when you seem to be literally talking to yourself. This act, however, should not be construed as insanity. This communication between two persons, either face-to-face or virtual, is interpersonal in nature. Mediated communication such as chatting through social media or mobile application is considered interpersonal because the sender and the receiver become two different entities who exchange messages through a channel, light or sound. Small group communication. This breadth or level of communication occurs among a small number of people interacting for a purpose. Members of small groups have equal chances of participating and engaging in the discussion. Public communication. The level of communication is public when a speaker addresses several listeners and these listeners only have a limited opportunity to feedback. Public speaking is not only intended for those entering a career that involves extensive formal communication. Mass communication. Mass communication is roughly defined as an interaction between a source and a vast audience. Like public communication, mass communication is also demonstrated before audience, but these audiences are typically anonymous and are in larger aggregates. Effective communication. Effective communication does not end at merely transmissions, exchanges, or shared meaning. It also requires that communicators are able to critique and evaluate the communication process itself to further improve it. Critical thinking is the ability to think clearly and rationally about what to do or what to believe, and to engage in reflective and independent thinking. Thus, is not matter of accumulating information. University Hong Kong Philosophy Department. Critical thinking allows you to correct or rectify wrong information that is being propagated. According to Wood, 2015, a communicator who is a critical thinker will be able to do the following: identify assumptions behind statements, claims, and arguments. Distinguish between logic and illogical reasoning. Separate facts from inferences. Evaluate evidence to determine its reliability, relevance, and value. Connect new information and ideas to familiar knowledge. Apply concepts learned in one context to other contexts. Recognize when and where specific principles are and are not appropriate. Distinguish among personal experiences, attitudes, behaviors, and generalizations about human beings. Consider alternative views on issues, solution to problems, and courses of action. Define problems and questions clearly and precisely. Draw reasonable conclusions about the implications of information and argument for thought and action. Determine how to find answers to important questions by considering what needs to be known and what sources might provide relevant knowledge. For instance, you would know better than to share a hoax on social media because you evaluate first the merit of the message before other people can also consume the same. Through critical thinking, you are able to argue and question the legitimacy of such information and its worthiness of being shared to other people. Issues and concerns in mass communication. Communication has its fair share of problem issues. People have different ways of understanding things, and the way they utilize communication is motivated by their desires and purposes. Relations with politics and the state. Political campaigns and propaganda. Citizen participation and democracy. War, peace, and terrorism. Making of foreign policy. Oppression, liberation, and revolution in states. Cultural and social issues. Cultural and economic globalization. Quality of cultural life and cultural production. Questions of identity. Definition and mediation of social experience. Crime, violence, pornography, and deviance. Civil peace and order and disorder. Emerging information society. Problem of information inequality. Consumerism and commercialism. Use and quality of leisure time. Normative questions. Freedom of speech and expression. Social and cultural inequality, class, ethnicity, gender, and sexuality relations. Media norms, ethics, and professionalism. Media policy and regulation. Media concentration and diversity. Power and effects. Communication effectively. Shaping of fashion and celebrities. Formation and change of public opinion. Communication is considered a cornerstone of human life. When you have decided to study and pursue communication later in your life, you will realize that you have made a right decision and it will serve you well in whatever endeavor you engage in. Thank you for watching. And we hope you have learned more about this topic. Goodbye and have a good day.